The Volvo is like 0 to 60 in 2 to 3 business days. So they say you have two types of friends. You have the instigators and the wranglers. And the instigators, they're the ones who usually like get you in the trouble, right? They're the ones that are pushing you along and egging you on. And then the wranglers, they're the ones that kind of keep you in check. And for most people, your parents, if you're lucky enough that your parents are your friends, your parents are your wranglers. Unfortunately for me, or fortunately, my dad is very much an instigator. A lot of the fun that I've had in my life has been with my dad. Growing up, he'd always shared his car passions with me, and we had different car hobbies. We went racing for a while. And one thing he always told me about was the Cannonball Run. He had read the stories in the magazines when he was younger, and we'd always talked about, wouldn't it be a great father-son adventure to go on a Cannonball Run together?
I'm probably one of the very few in the audience that read the original article in March of 1972 by Brock Yates about the Cannonball. I'm sitting in college with my tie-dyed t-shirt, one of my 3 pairs of blue jeans, and what I thought was a hot 67 Chevy Impala. And I'm reading this and, oh, this is the coolest thing. Oh man, this is cool. Gotta do it. Like tens of thousands of people since then. That Cannonball, you gotta do it. It took me about 12 seconds to figure out I couldn't afford it, and my car would never make it. I did have enough crazy people that would go with me, but that was the limitation on money and car. I didn't realize it was going to take 50 years before I actually did it. Nick calls and he said, there's a Cannonball coming up. They're going to call it the Musketball, and I think you and I should do it. In my mind, I'm willing, but I'm not sure that I should be driving rumored speeds of some of the Cannonball speeds today. But he said, Dad, these are going to be cars of under 100 horsepower. I can do that. So we're getting ready. He talks about Rob. I said, oh, what's Rob like? He said, I don't know. I've never met him. But I think he sounds good. He'll do okay. I'm all fired up. I'm not quite sure what to expect, but the adrenaline is running. We pick up Rob in Chicago.
So I'm talking to my dad and I say, we have to figure out what kind of a car we're going to build for this. We have to figure out a plan. How are we going to go about this? We're thinking about old like Mercedes diesels, thinking about some other stuff, old Saabs, of course. And I was like, you know what? A Volvo 240 would be the perfect car for this.
So we got to Connecticut. That was my introduction. The first evening, cars are coming in, and I can't believe this eclectic group. Hearing what they've done mechanically, cars, and cannonballing, it reminded me of the old saying, Amarillo Slim said, if you sit down at a table to play poker, and you look around and you don't know who the sucker is, you're the sucker. And about that time, I thought, we're not sneaking up on anybody. Me personally, I think I'm kind of at the bottom of this barrel.
It was exciting to get to see the other cars, the other participants, and kind of listen in to, oh, what's your plan, what's your route, what are you going to do, and confirm that we were on the right path. So that night before the run, I said to my dad, we got to get to bed early. And he goes, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the bar and have a drink, and then I'll get to bed early. Well, the next day I found out from Doug, he's like, oh yeah, your dad was at the bar last night for a while. He said, we didn't know who he was at first, but we quickly figured it all out, and he was a great time. I was like, oh man, I'm sorry about that, guys. And they're like, no, he was a ton of fun. It was excellent. So all right, good. So we get to Good Wives the morning of, and they have the speech by the dumpster, and we do the Le Mans style start, and it was all exciting. We run to the car and get in, and Rob's going to be the first driver, and we take off, kind of get our sea legs about us on the highway through Connecticut and cross the bridge and make our way onto the run, right? It's a bunch of middle-aged guys, like myself, little bigger guys, and we're not particularly athletic, and we have these cars that match. The Volvo is like 0 to 60 in 2 to 3 business days. I mean, this car just cannot do anything to save its life. And we figured out early on, it's got a button on the automatic shifter. If you click the button, it turns off the overdrive, keeps it in third gear. And now this thing is just screaming, right? It doesn't have a tack because it has a clock, because it's a Volvo, it's classy. But if it had a tack, it would be deep into the red at this point. and we're just running it the whole way. You start to get in these little groups. We get in this pack, and we're with Ficarra in the Audi, and we're with the Yaris, and we're with a couple other cars. I know Grady and Bennett and Chris, they're in their Volkswagen, and we're all kind of keeping pace with each other. I take over a shift driving through Ohio, and then Indiana. We got to stop and fill up with gas again because it's a Volvo. It doesn't get great fuel economy. And my dad takes over for his first shift. And I can just tell we're all excited. Even Rob's excited at this point. He's a little nervous, and I understand, but even Rob's excited. And my dad gets behind the wheel, and we take off. And we're going through Indiana, and we get to Indianapolis, and we're neck and neck with Ficarra, and it's like we're just barely passing each other at like 100 miles an hour just on the highway. And Travis Bell pulls up on the highway in his green Holden, and he's taking pictures, and all of us passing each other. And my dad is just having the time of his life. And it's that moment when you're like, this was a good idea.
That Audi, it had to have better suspension and handling than our 240 Volvo with 200,000 miles. But we're getting up next, and Nick and Rob are giving me encouragement way beyond inspiration, which I probably didn't already need, because I don't want to embarrass myself. And if we can keep up with him, well, if we're keeping up with him, why can't we maybe pass him? So it was a little bit rainy and wet and wind blowing. And I understand that somebody in John's Audi, after a while, all of a sudden looked and kind of blurted out, that old professor's even driving. I thought maybe that's why they left off. And they said, no, they didn't leave off. You guys just passed us at 2 miles per hour. So I was pretty proud of that. And Rob was the one that, you can't let them pass you. Come on, you got to go.
We're getting through Oklahoma and into Texas. And at this point, the sun is up. It's getting to be daytime again. So we've got pretty good visibility. You know, we're all kind of refreshed. The sunlight does that to you. And we're switching off drivers, and Rob's doing a fantastic job. He's keeping up a solid pace. And when Rob is driving, my dad is in the passenger seat, and he's the spotter for the runs. I'm trying to sleep, but at first I'm really kind of worried. Like, I don't know if my dad's going to do a good job, so I should probably stay awake and help Rob. And then later on, I'm so excited to just be part of this and see this. And I'm snapping pictures and watching as we're going through. And my dad takes over. He probably drove 4 or 5 shifts on that run. And we pulled over roughly every 200 miles to swap drivers. And for that run, for our group, that was a really good number. So he had quite a few shifts, but his last shift was in Arizona. And Arizona has this long downhill stretch in the forest, kind of more towards the western part. And if you're on a run, this is one of the fastest parts of the run. If you get a good hop on it and there's no traffic, you can really get some speed.
My last shift was fun and exciting. It was clear, afternoon, sunny, gradual turns, and you just got into a rhythm. And it was so good. And Nick is coaching, and the two of us are just like in the old days when we autocrossed.
We had hit like 112, 113 in the car earlier, which in a Volvo 240 on stock suspension, refreshed, but stock, that's an adventure in and of itself. And my dad is driving, and he's got the downhill, and we can just see that needle on the speedometer just going and going and going, and it's just wiggling, and we're watching the GPS numbers go, and he gets the 113, 114. There's still road in front. We're all cheering in the car, go, 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 and he's into it, and he's big grin on his face, and he's just, and 115, and he got to 116 miles an hour in this Volvo.
I hit that 116 miles an hour. Obviously, I've driven much faster than that over the time, but that was the most thrilling 116 miles an hour. I was so proud, but I was more proud of my team.
So we get to our last fuel stop. It's my turn to take over driving. In California, from the ag checkpoint kind of by Needles until you get up to Barstow, is basically this giant climb up this hill. And when you say up this hill, it's several thousand feet in elevation. And this little Volvo is doing everything it can. I mean, it's got the aerodynamics of a brick pushing a barn door. So it just is not going to give you a lot. And I had my foot on the floor on that accelerator from Needles to Barstow. And we get a couple miles out of Barstow, and we realize the car's starting to overheat because we are just pushing it so hard. We didn't know it, but we had thrown a belt, and so the fan had stopped working. So we said, okay, car's overheating, basic science, turn the heat on. And we turned the heat on, and we quickly realized that at some point we had blown a fuse. And I had so many electronics run through this car, and they don't make high output alternators for a Volvo 240. I think I got the biggest one I could find. It was like 80 or 90 amps. So we had blown a fuse for the power windows.
That last stretch when things started to fail, we threw the belt. We didn't have power steering. Nick went to Armstrong. We didn't have cooling, so we had the heater blowing. We couldn't turn the windows down. So we've been in this car for a couple of days. We're not smelling as good as we could. I was the one that probably got a little short in LA because we're looking at LA traffic, and I'm thinking, I believe, according to what I can see on traffic, we can take this route instead. Google and traditional, everyone is going the traditional route. I'm saying take the other route. I'm outvoted. And I right away realized what Nick's trying to do here as a team, defer, be gracious about it. And I still think I was right. I still think we could have beat him by another 10 minutes at least. But we'll put that aside.
Pull up to the Portofino guard shack, 35 hours and 35 minutes. An extremely respectable time for any cannonball, but especially in a Volvo 240, and especially with my 70-year-old father driving part of it, I would say. I think he was pleasantly surprised with the results. I know I was.
But the fun thing coming in, my darling wife, Nick's mom, flew in, and a very good friend of ours picked her up at the airport, came down, and I texted her, get a case of champagne. Get a cold case of champagne to greet us. And also get the Cannonball beer, because the Portofino has Cannonball beer, which I had ordered on Nick's first Cannonball to be waiting for him. So we come across the finish. Getting out is that fabulous feeling. And there my wife is with an open bottle of champagne and a Cannonball beer. And fantastic. So we're passing the bottle around and drinking it. It wasn't cold. They couldn't get it cold. But so, at that point, who cares? We turn around. We're cheering. The next team's coming in.
One thing that was really special was the following evening, we had kind of our awards ceremony. And afterwards, Doug had his podcast. And he did it live from the lobby in the Portofino. And he was calling up different people, different teams to tell their story about what they had done. And he caught me right before he went live. And he said, go get your dad. I want to make sure that I interview you guys. I said, yeah, that'd be great. So we get on there. Doug is asking us questions. What's the history? How did you plan for this run? Are you excited? And we got to share our background and our story.
Everything came together. And I just felt it hit me then, it hit me now. And it just hit me that night how proud I was. Not only Nick, my whole family, and what we'd accomplished. And the teams, there was a husband-wife team, there was a father-daughter team, great friend teams. But we were the father-son team. And admittedly, I was probably one of the oldest people to have ever done this.
It was so special that this was something that I had spent 30-some years of my life learning about from him. And so being able to take him along and do this with him was such a fantastic experience. It definitely wasn't the first automotive adventure we had together, and it certainly won't be the last, but it was definitely very memorable.
We'd like to thank this month's sponsor of the VINwiki YouTube channel, Minta Watches. We know the world of great cars and great watches tends to overlap a lot, and Minta specializes in remarkable timepieces, both vintage and modern, because they know that great watches also have great stories. So if you're looking for some entertaining and educational watch content, be sure to check out Adam's YouTube channel. And if you're in the market for a watch or you just want to learn more about watches, be sure to reach them at the link in the description below. They'll take great care of you.